So I'm just gonna put this on. Don't disturb.
Yeah, I already did that actually.
Very unprofessional. Well, so a little bit of water just to kind of.
Is this a part of the podcast too? Just
It's a gag. No, but
it's like ASMR or
yeah.
Whatever it's called, you know, when people like in a microphone and shit.
Hello everyone, my name is Vito Gogola and this is my brother André. We are filmmakers based in Stockholm, Sweden. And this is actually our first filmed podcast.
Yeah, I don't know what to say about this. Maybe you don't have the chops for a Joe Rogan career.
Yeah. No, but anyway.
Are you gonna cough or are you gonna?
I'm just gonna do it one more time. Hello, my name is Vito Gogola, and this is my brother André, and we are the Gogola brothers. We're filmmakers based in Stockholm, Sweden, and this is our first filmed podcast. We did a podcast a couple of years ago, which was only audio, on a balcony in Spain, and there was a lot of like wind and stuff and
show off, but keep going.
Yeah, exactly. But this time we're going to film it, and we're also going to have a more specific conversation about a certain topic. And one topic that we deemed fitting to start with was Quentin Tarantino's latest film, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And more specifically, the effects in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Me and Andre are quite interested in visual effects and special effects.
Yeah.
And we're interested in understanding how you do them and how you can improve them, and we're kind of inspired by other filmmakers in how they view effects and how to use them. And I think Tarantino, which is one of our favorite directors, is particularly interesting because he has this kind of philosophy about CGI, which is that you really shouldn't do it that much. He prefers to have most things on set, in camera, and not add too much stuff in post. And I think one good example of that is the Hateful Eight, which they shot in a cabin, or I believe it was a studio, but the temperature was really low because Tarantino didn't want to like add CG like clouds from like them puffing or breathing. So it was really like cold to shoot that film, and I believe a lot of people suffered a lot, but at the same time it was very practical.
But also like suffered by actor metrics, you know.
Right.
But yeah, please go on.
Yeah, but like essentially the actors really felt the cold, which I think is good also in terms of not only effects, but also for the actors to truly feel the environment instead of stepping inside a studio with a big green screen. I think it adds a lot to actually be there in the location as much as possible. And that is something that I'm personally pretty like inspired by when it comes to Tarantino's work.
And not only Quentin Tarantino necessarily, because you know you have guys like Christopher Nolan as well,
right,
and also you know Paul Thomas Anderson, another male director who's like kind of Calvinistic when it comes to the CGI. You know, they view it as a sin to have CGI in their movies. They try to limit it as much as possible.
Although we had those CG frogs in Magnolia.
Yeah, and that was also early in his career, and he did have some kind of like computer-generated imagery in There Will Be Blood.
Right.
But it was very minimal. And, you know, Nolan has done, you know, he has committed the same sin, you know, having, you know, CGI that, you know, in retrospect, you can think like, yeah, well, maybe they could have done that a little bit better.
Right.
Hayao Miyazaki is another one of these great filmmakers who's, while he doesn't do live action movies, he's also very vigilant about not having much CGI in his films. Right. Just to mention, I mean, this is not relevant for the podcast, but I'm guessing a lot of people who listen to this podcast I mean, I hopefully think they're not gonna view this as a lecture, because we don't want to either. Some people who talk about like movies or VFX, it's almost like they have this kind of smug feeling of like they're educating you.
Mm-hmm.
But like educating people about film is like educating someone how to play the Nintendo. Like,
Right.
sure, it's fun, but it's not of the same,
Yeah.
weight as like a finance lecture or something like that.
But anyway, we are going to go through a couple of effects that we find interesting from this film and kind of talk about them in our subjective terms. So like, we're not visual effects artists, but it's still interesting to talk about the effects that we like and talk about perhaps also effects that we thought didn't work out so well. And it's especially interesting doing that with like a director that you really revere, because it's a good kind of learning opportunity, I think, to see where we really think that some choices were really well made and other choices where it was kind of like, yeah, I'm not entirely sure about this one. But anyway, I was thinking we could just dive into it straight away.
Okay. So I'm just gonna start off by talking about The Great Escape. And I'm gonna try to do this fairly quick, even though it's kind of a convoluted scene. So first off, they just tried to find the right lens. The type of lens that they had in the original movie, The Great Escape, and used that for their own movie.
Mm-hmm.
They believe that they got the same type of lens, but there's no way of verifying because we can't travel back in time, as of yet, at least.
Maybe they had some information though.
No, from reading the article, I got the impression that they kind of just tried different lenses out.
Okay.
And I mean, he's like a master, Robert Richardson, so I'm
Yeah.
sure it's more or less the same type of lens. But I don't think they make it very clear that they got like exactly the same type of lens. And then from that, they just started matching the lighting on set. So they shot the scene on some parking lot at some studio, had Leo stand in front of a green screen, and just played around with the lighting, comparing it with the original footage. After that, they made a clean plate, or they basically just got rid of Steve McQueen in the original footage digitally. And it's a fairly common procedure nowadays. A good example of that is for like Kevin James, the sound guy. They released like a VFX breakdown where it's kind of amazing how they delete like some people from a movie and then put in Kevin James. So I think they did that basically just to get rid of Steve McQueen from that footage so they could put in Leonardo DiCaprio in that scene. And then after that, once they had the clean plate, they basically just got rid of the green from the green screen, which had Leo in it. Which is called chroma keying. It's a little bit different from rotoscoping, if I understand correctly. Rotoscoping is more like cutting out someone frame by frame from some footage. But green screen is just removing the color, and then you have whoever you want to put into a new frame, basically. After that, it was just the kind of arduous process of matching the color scheme and the lighting, and you kind of know. Do you know, like when we're on Adobe Premiere and we're playing around with exposure,
Yeah.
I think they just did that basically. They kind of just looked at the depth of the blackness and the depth of the whiteness.
Just simple grading, like
exactly.
They try different things and kind of tinkered with it.
Yeah, exactly. So really, I think that's the best way to describe it.
Yeah.
That scene, like green screen and tinkering.
Yeah.
And that's it. And this kind of goes into a project we worked on, Tenet Uber, which pretty much used exactly the same type of technology that they used in this movie.
Yeah.
So there's one scene that's like for only like 3 or 4 seconds in Tenet Uber, where we tried to do kind of the same thing as they did for the Great Escape scene. So we used green screen and we put you in the back seat of a car in the movie Tenet.
Yeah.
So you see, if you look at that image, you can kind of see that, everything in that image is from the original movie except for Vito, who we put in artificially. I know it's very hard to believe that he wasn't in that movie, but we did that through just doing green screen. We didn't.
Unfortunately, I couldn't shoot anything with R-Pats and what's his John David Washington. I think his nickname is JD. Yeah, R-Pats and JD.
Yeah.
Shout out.
If you look at the image there, we pretty much did everything that they said that they did in that article about the effect in the Great Escape. We did everything except we didn't need to make a clean plate. We didn't need to take someone out of the movie. We just put you into Tenet the movie.
Because the backseat was empty.
Anyway. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it was fairly simpler in that sense. We didn't have to kind of deal with that problem. But at the same time, like, it took a long time to match.
We reshot it also, the green screen and also the ones that were shot in a car.
Yeah.
We reshot as well.
Yeah.
Like 2 or 3 times.
And I mean, we did a similar, like, it's very, like, there's a lot of details in making a shot as the one in Tenet Uber and the shot in The Great Escape. Because you can notice, like, for example, in Tenet Uber, you have a hoodie on.
Yeah.
Just so we didn't have to deal with, your hair kind of sticking out, and we had to feather it, and it would look more fake, basically. Mm-hmm. And I think they did the same thing with Leo.
He has a very appropriate hairstyle for that scene, because it's very like, the pompadour, like pulled back, and it's kind of flat. It's not like frizzy or anything.
Exactly. And I think that's intentional too.
Yeah. And also like this shot, I think they worked on for quite a while, because I believe it wasn't featured in the Cannes cut, like the premiere at Cannes.
Yeah.
So if I remember that correctly, then, it was probably a pretty tough scene to pull off.
Yeah.
And I think these kind of scenes require also kind of time, in a sense, too. You have to let her go, like... some time has to pass so that you can kind of return to the scene.
Get fresh eyes, basically.
Yeah, return to the scene and see, does this look realistic? Because otherwise you might get like tunnel vision. You work on something and you can't really see it with fresh eyes anymore.
The most important thing with those kinds of effects is that the initial reaction, when someone who has never seen the effect before thinks, oh, that looks really realistic.
Yeah.
So when you're making that effect and you're only one person, it's very hard to maintain that, what do you say, like those fresh eyes, basically.
Yeah.
When you're looking at the effect, because you're constantly like reviewing it and adjusting it a little bit. So after a while, you get kind of unsure of your own perception of the effect. That's why it's always good to have like other people looking at it.
Yeah.
And we were very fortunate. We showed Tenet Uber to 2 of our friends, and they actually thought that Vito had been in the movie Tenet.
Yeah. One friend was like, wait, but he's famous. And he looked at Robert Pattinson. It kind of flatters me that he thought that we were shooting a little skit with these guys, but
maybe we were. It's not impossible that maybe that's how we did it. That's why it looks so real.
Maybe we're just lying about it being an effect.
Yeah.
And I was thinking maybe we can start with Operazione Dyn-O-Mite, the Italian movie that Rick Dalton stars in.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts about that one? If I remember correctly, so the scene is that Rick Dalton is basically driving a car. It's like a car chase.
Yeah.
And then he drives like pretty close to like some kind of shore or port.
Yeah.
And he drives off like almost into the ocean or like onto a boat or a bridge or something. I can't remember exactly.
It's on like the other side of the bridge, I think.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And then they like freeze frame it, and then like Cliff,
Yeah.
the stunt double that he is kind of buddies with in the film. And so why is this scene interesting in this regard?
The effects in Operation Dyn-O-Mite and F.B.I. is fairly more easy to explain. And coincidentally, we kind of used the same type of effects technology that they used for those scenes. Simply put, inserts. No green screen or anything like that for those scenes. I reviewed the footage of Operation Dyn-O-Mite, and I originally thought they used green screen. But from reviewing Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and then the original movie by Sergio Corbucci, which was called, do you know the title?
No, I don't remember actually.
Yeah, I don't remember the title either. But that movie, looking at that movie and looking at the Hollywood movie, I quickly just made the assumption that, it's probably just inserts. There is no green screen. Because the material that they used of the actor that Rick Dalton is supposed to play on behalf or play his part, those shots weren't really alike.
Okay.
So it wouldn't, it would be impossible to make that work, basically.
Yeah, I'm just gonna double check that because I think I saw Robert Richardson saying something about green screen for that Italian.
It looks like it's green screen, definitely.
Yeah.
But I don't know why they would make it green screen in that case. I mean, I don't have any problem with being wrong. It could be green screen. I think it looks like it's green screen.
We shot, this is an interview with Polygon, Polygon interviewed Robert Richardson, and he said, "We shot Super 8 for the flashback to the spaghetti western that Rick was involved with in Italy. Same thing for the Italian films. We shot within a car with green screen."
Oh, okay. Yeah, but that's...
I'm not sure if it's Operazione Dyn-O-Mite or something else. I'm not sure. Quentin wasn't entirely certain what parts he was going to use for the film. He knew it was going to be one section, but he didn't know how many shots would be involved. So we shot a number of small pieces for that to be able to be utilized inside of the remake of that, and tried to duplicate the quality inside the negative, which is of course the same thing we ended up doing by recreating the look of Bounty Law, just trying to make it in black and white stock and duplicate the visual look of the time period. So I'm not really sure.
But maybe we can say, as it sounds from you reading that article, it sounds like they did inserts with green screen, or they did inserts with green screen. So, I mean, I don't know if they used the footage from, because what I can imagine is he's driving the car, and in profile you can see like from outside that it's like sunset or and maybe they put that in from the original movie, or maybe they just put it in, and tried to make it look as if it came from that film.
Yeah, but I do agree that scene it does look a little bit green screenish.
Yeah.
But I can't really tell for sure if it is green screen or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now I think it's kind of confirmed. I mean, it is kind of an insert, but it's also a little bit of green screen, but maybe not in the same way as The Great Escape, No. That's much more convoluted.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess it was kind of an insert, but maybe they used some green screen there. F.B.I, I don't think they used any green screen. I think it was just an insert.
Yeah.
And I mean, we kind of did the same thing. I mean, it's much easier to do just an insert, and it's also much easier to make it look really good, I feel.
Yeah, because it's more a matter of grading.
Yeah. It's more a
lens choice, of course. And
yeah, and it's also just a matter of using the right props too.
yeah.
So I would guess that for FBI and Operation Dyn-O-Mite, they just got clothes that looked like the clothes they had in the original movie.
Yeah.
And then they just tried to match it, basically. The only thing that's difficult, or it's not really difficult, it depends if you find it enjoyable or not, but we did that kind of matching when we made Tenet Uber.
Yeah.
And I gotta say, I thought it was pretty fun just to try to match the color as well as possible. And after we did it, a lot of people commented to us, you know.
There was a lot of people who specifically mentioned the grading being very similar to Tenet rather than the scene where I'm cut in, like where I'm put in Tenet. And
but people liked that scene too. But I think they were more, you know, the simplicity and the beauty of just doing an insert.
And that is also a lot easier.
Yeah.
You know, it's easier technically speaking to just shoot a new scene and then grade it kind of similarly and try to, you know, make it look as if it's the same location and these kind of things.
Yeah.
If you happen to have opinions that differ from what we think, you know, write to us and lay out your arguments.
And it's important.
Win us over.
Yeah, what would we say?
Win us over.
Yeah, win us over, exactly. Yeah. And, you know, it's worth remembering that this is the first time we do a podcast. Yeah. You know, we shoot it.
So please be gentle.
Yeah, and like many first times in life, there's a lot you have to figure out. It's kind of awkward, and there's an element of performance anxiety to it, you know. God, I hope I get it up tonight. And I'm of course referring to uploading the podcast online.
Get it up on YouTube.
Yeah.
The next one would be the drive-in theater scene where we see Cliff Booth driving home to his trailer, which is behind the Van Nuys drive-in theater. So anyway, how they shot that scene? Do you know how they shot it? Do you have any guess?
Miniatures, but that's about it.
Yeah. When they shot this, they had a green screen in that place. And the front mural is actually a miniature. Because like real front murals back in those days were like really big. So Barbara Ling, who was the production designer for this film, she essentially couldn't make one that was like the right size or the realistic size. So she made like a miniature, which was still a very big miniature, but a miniature. So essentially it's like a crane shot that goes over the green screen, and then they combine that with like the miniature shot, crane work, and then above the mural, and then we see like the lens flare from the projector and all the cars. And those cars are actually toy cars because Tarantino wanted something physical in the scene. He didn't want CGI cars. And I do believe, I think I read it somewhere, and we will post a link in the description to where I read it if I manage to find it. I think they actually shot like a shot on a parking lot with real cars as well, and that goes for the moving cars in that shot, because you can see that there's like some cars that are moving and those aren't toy cars. They combine those shots so it looks like they're all real cars. And I think that was a really cool shot, and I'm actually quite amazed over how John Dykstra, who was I believe the special effects supervisor, I think it's called, the title. Legend in the effects world. I was quite amazed how good the lens flare looked, to be honest.
Yeah.
Maybe it's practical, I don't know. I just thought it looked good, and I would assume usually that you would add like a VFX lens flare to kind of cover up stuff and, make it more kind of Yeah, I don't know,
glossy.
Yeah, but it looked really good, so I'm not sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think nothing in that scene stood out to me as artificial.
No.
It's not like watching a Marvel movie and you can kind of see the seams all over it,
Yeah.
So I didn't even know that it was such an advanced scene technically.
Yeah. No, yeah, right. And also there's pretty good interviews with or one in particular good interview with Barbara Ling about that scene and other set design that she did.
Okay.
And we'll post that as well. It's it's really interesting to read about her work. She did work also on the Doors movie with Val Kilmer as Jim Morrison,
which is fitting, I suppose.
Yeah, it's kind of the same era, and
Yeah.
also she grew up during that era as well in LA. So she and Tarantino knows this environment.
Yeah.
And also I wanted to say that when I read one interview with Barbara Ling, she said that, you see, then the camera moves and we are in another location behind the old drive-in, this kind of dilapidated factory where Cliff's trailer sits. That was one of the few pieces that used VFX because it just would have been a monumental build. Financially, it just would have been prohibitive. And I'm wondering what is VFX in that scene. I'm thinking maybe it's like we see like the screen.
Yeah.
In the background, it's like a blur and out of focus. I'm thinking that might be VFX in that scene, but I can't really tell what else because everything else looks pretty like practical to me. But yeah, it was a really interesting to read about that scene, and
it's kind of surprising that it's so.
Yeah.
There's so many layers to that scene,
and also both Tarantino and Robert Richardson and Barbara Ling have like stuff, they've been interviewed about that scene. So for all those who are interested, you can just read it. It's really interesting. And also it was pretty funny, like detail about this. So like Quentin Tarantino was talking about the, that he wanted toy cars.
Yeah.
And he essentially said, like, I don't want CGI cars, I want toy cars. I want physical toy cars. Cars that can move a little bit, but a physical car. And John Dykstra goes, well, that can get kind of expensive and no one's going to notice the difference. And then Quentin goes, I'll notice the difference. And come on, John, so will you. So the next one is actually a quite controversial one for me and for you as well, because so there is like one or two shots in this film of an airplane, and I believe it's supposed to be like a 747 model, I think it's called. Apparently it's not accurate. Like I think John Travolta, even, who is like an aviation nerd, kind of pointed out that it's not 100% accurate. But that to me, I know nothing of airplanes in that regard, so I didn't think of that. However,
hopefully we will survive now that we know this information.
Yeah. However, I did think that those shots looked CG. And I was convinced that they are CG when first seeing them. However, I did find an interview again with Robert Richardson, the DP. So when he was describing the drive-in scene that I mentioned earlier, he said like this: so visual effects designer John Dykstra created that in CG, the drive-in theater scene, or actually in miniatures. He did miniatures also for the airplanes in the sky. I don't know what airplanes he's talking about, because I don't think there are airplanes in the drive-in theater scene. So I'm assuming it's this shot. So if this is a model, I'm Yeah, I think it looks CG, and honestly, I don't really know. I got pretty insecure when I read about that.
I mean, by looking at it, I'm highly doubtful
Yeah.
that is miniatures.
Yeah, because right now I'm just like remembering it from out of memory.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I saw that shot, but I just remember it looking CG. And if it isn't CG, then I think it's gone through a lot of touch-ups.
Yeah, exactly. To the extent that it's not even a real shot anymore.
Well, yeah. And it's pretty funny because Tarantino has a tendency to make, or he's done like airplane scenes before. Like in Kill Bill, he had an airplane scene where Beatrix Kiddo goes to Tokyo.
Yeah.
And that airplane scene is, I believe it's inspired by a film called Goki Body Snatcher from Hell, which also has that kind of like orange, almost like house-esque.
Nobuhiko Obayashi kind of aesthetic.
Yeah. And you can actually see like the wires on that plane.
Yeah. But I think that's on purpose,
but it's intentional. Yeah. Because it looks super fake. But I mean, in a good way, it looks like he wanted it to look like a miniature, and it kind of does this like, kind of like when a kid plays with a little toy airplane.
Yeah,
like it does this kind of wiggle, or something.
A guy who's like the master of miniatures right now, that's Christopher Nolan. I mean, look at the he doesn't really do VFX breakdowns, but. No. In Dunkirk, all of the Batman movies he made. Yeah. And also, I'm sure, like Inception also has miniatures. And I mean, it's astounding what he manages to pull off with his miniatures. And it truly looks like the real thing. Yeah. So it's not impossible to make it look really good with miniatures.
Yeah. But I think in Kill Bill, the point there was to kind of look, I guess, kitsch or like a little bit, low budget, but I wasn't bothered because that was the aesthetic he was going for. But in this scene in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, I was kind of, I'm confused. If this is a model, I think it looks really CG.
Because the thing with the shot with the miniature in Kill Bill is that it's very specific to that time, that technology.
Yeah, right.
But they didn't have CGI back in the 60s,
No.
That's why it comes across as kind of not well suited for the film. It wouldn't make sense if it's so like specific to the era, like in Kill Bill. That I mean, they didn't have that kind of CGI back in the 60s.
And I'm also, because the thing is with Tarantino, he also in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, he has some effects that look pretty bad. But it's intentional once again, like as with Kill Bill, the rat.
Yeah, I was thinking of it as soon as you mentioned.
In Spawn Ranch, there's like a rat that kind of looks like some animatronic rat that kind of goes like.
Yeah, we'll probably show it in the podcast.
Yeah,
you never know. The next boy you meet may be the one. The next time he looks at you, may be the time he.
And it looks super fake, but. I wasn't bothered at all because I was thinking that he probably wanted it to look kind of, that aesthetic.
Yeah, and it fucking looks real too.
Yeah, it's not CG.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it was like, feathered into the image.
I do think I would think it was worse to have like a CG rat lying there and like
it would be far more disturbing as well. But also like.
Just personal opinion. I think I kind of like that.
But that's
tacky practical effect kind of.
That's the thing with like, for example, Inception. That's a movie as well that uses a lot of practical effects, and it's like genius how they pulled it off.
Yeah.
But then they have like two shots, and we're gonna show those two shots, where you can see that those two shots they had to do digitally, and it really doesn't hold the same kind of magic as the other practical shots. I'm thinking of the shot where Leonardo DiCaprio and Elliot Page walks like from the ground to, you know, another ground, like
Do you mean like it's like
it's really hard to explain for like a Swede in English how the hell
word. But it's like a mind trick.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't remember. It's like the stairs. Yeah, whatever. But
but it's kind of like that. But you know, like when the cities, they're kind of collapsing.
Oh, you mean
themselves.
that scene? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So they're walking here, and then they start walking as if they're walking on the wall.
Yeah.
Basically.
Right. Yeah.
And then they have another scene, you know, where Tom Hardy is Elon Musk's ex-wife. She's in that movie apparently.
Yeah, okay.
And he's like a woman in that scene. So you can see him in the mirror.
Oh yeah.
And I mean it really is not at the same level as, you know, the rotating hotel corridor scene.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, interesting. So I was also going to mention, just as a quick kind of detail here regarding Tarantino and CGI. So sometimes well, I mean, it's kind of difficult to kind of find these things that you don't like in like one of your biggest idols' movies.
Yeah.
But when it comes to CGI and Tarantino, so I think we need to address the cows.
Yeah.
In Inglorious Basterds.
It must be addressed.
You know, it's like, I don't know if that's CG cows or if it's real cows that they rotoscoped in. But I mean, you know, the shadow on those cows.
It's unforgivable.
Well, I mean, you know, it's yeah, but I just, but the thing here though is
he's going to cinema hell for that one, you know.
No. No. He's done too much good for
I'm
humanity.
I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Sorry. If Q is even looking at this, which I highly doubt, then sorry.
We're more worried about him if he actually takes VFX advice from us.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just kidding.
But I was gonna say that. So like, what was I gonna say?
The cows.
Yeah. Well, I can't remember, but anyway. So like Harry Cohen, who was the sound designer for Inglorious Basterds, he added cow sounds because they were talking about this being a dairy farm. So he added some cow sounds, and because he did so, the natural felt we need to add cows as well. You know, and the cows, they don't look great. But yeah, this was the thing I was gonna say, and that is that when I saw this film, and I've seen it several times, I didn't really notice the cows until you mentioned the cows.
Okay.
So I didn't look at them because when the film starts, we see like the year, and then I was actually looking at the house.
Yeah.
I wasn't really looking at the cows, and then when Hans Landa comes, I'm looking at him.
Yeah.
So again, I'm not really looking at the cows, but then when I look at them, then I see it. Then I see like, this doesn't look very good.
Yeah.
But I think that goes to show that it's also very important where you kind of direct the focus in a scene.
Yeah.
So I think in a way that scene works because, you know, not even I, who claim to care a lot about effects, noticed it. But now that I have noticed it, it kind of bothers me a little bit. But it's worth mentioning. I didn't really think of it before, you mentioned it, to be honest.
But look, like 95% of the stuff Quentin Tarantino does is like genius level. But it's something I reacted, not the first time I saw it, but I remember that when I saw those cows later on, as I, you know, matured in my knowledge of effects and things like that.
Yeah.
That I did think it was, you know, my guess is that they probably just had like green screen footage and just put the cows in there and then did an artificial shadow and, you know, And it's not, it's not great. It doesn't look that realistic, but it's really a really, really small part of the entire film.
And
I mean, it's
that
like one of our
scene-
favorite movies anyway.
That scene
so.
is one of the best scenes in that movie as well.
Yeah, but I mean that's kind of obvious. So we're not here to just congratulate him on being really a great filmmaker.
No.
It's also we want to, for someone that's so talented and so good at making movies, I think it's, although it doesn't happen very often, I think it's good to point out, like, oh yeah, maybe that he could have done
Yeah,
a little.
Yeah, I think it's
kind of like
I mean,
with PTA, Paul Thomas Anderson with the frogs in Magnolia.
Yeah,
And there's one shot where the oil goes through the oil rig house
yeah,
that looks slightly off in a
Yeah.
real sense.
yeah, right. I was gonna say also it's pretty funny because like at the end of that scene when Shoshana is running away, and he yells that au revoir Shoshana. You can hear like a really like a low volume like moo. I believe it's that one that Harry Cohen, the sound designer, meant in this interview, and that is actually Quentin Tarantino. Like
Really?
he wanted a cow that sounded like this, and then I'm not gonna try to sound like a cow, but he did like a moo, and then the sound designer was like, yeah, let's just go with that one.
Yeah.
So think of that. It's a really low volume if it's the right one that I kind of found.
Okay.
But it's the last one, or when we leave that scene, we hear QT's own moo. The last one is the Manson scene, or the spoiler alert hippie slaughter scene. One thing that I like about this scene is actually the cutting. So there's a lot of practical effects going on in this scene, but the cutting is really where I think that's really the most excellent part about this scene. Because as we walk through the scene, there's some instances of what I would assume is padding of the arm when Brandy, the dog, bites Tex Watson, and also when the dog bites him in the crotch. I believe it's also padded, or I hope so. And then there's also like a close-up with Brandy as she's like holding on to the crotch. I believe that must be like some sort of doll or dummy that's holding like the crotch.
I agree.
But I can only guess. I couldn't find anything about it.
No, but it certainly looks like a puppet.
But again, it's cut so fast, so it kind of works. But if you really look at it, it kind of looks like a dummy. One thing that I kind of thought was pretty well done was when Cliff throws the dog food can in Sadie. I think Sadie or Sadie. Sorry, I'm Swedish. I don't know how to pronounce these nicknames, but Sadie, I think. He throws the dog food can in her face, and it's quite well done. Like, I mean, it doesn't really look like VFX. It doesn't look like a VFX can, but I guess they used like two different shots or something. I don't know. Do you have any idea?
But could that not be exactly the same thing that they did for 2001: A Space Odyssey with the pen? Maybe they have some kind of blocking glass, and it just.
I don't know. Maybe. But
I mean, that's the way you could do it.
It's well done. But one thing again with cutting is she gets hit in the face, but there's no blood. and then she falls down on the floor, and now she has a lot of blood in her face. She goes from like no blood to blood.
Yeah.
But it works really well because it's cut like that. And when we dive into the scene, we're, you know, following the scene with the help of excellent cutting. There's pretty fast cuts when Cliff Booth does his kind of basic, I don't know, martial arts thing when he like grabs the arm and then like hits the hand holding the knife, and he gets like the knife in the knee, takes Watson. And the cuts are really fast. Like if you look at it, it's like split second for every cut, but we're always following what's happening. Then we have like the classic like stunt punches. And then we have a stunt, which you can kind of tell is Brad Pitt's stunt double, if you pause, of course. And then also the knife in leg. There's 2 knives in legs in this scene. One in Tex Watson's leg and one in Cliff Booth's. I believe it's some sort of like practical, like they placed like a fake knife in his leg. Because he's touching it. I don't think it's VFX.
No, I don't think it's VFX either. I think it's probably, as you mentioned, you know, a knife that's cut, you know, to just place it.
Yeah, that's what I believe at least. This scene uses a lot of dummies. For the scene where Cliff Booth stomps on Tex's head, you can tell it's a dummy if you pause. But again, cutting is so smooth and efficient and fast-paced that you don't really think of it at all.
And to be honest, you would need to be a dummy to not think that was a dummy.
Yeah, it's a very, you know, stunt person who is very serious about his profession.
Yeah.
He can even get his head stomped in by Brad Pitt.
Yeah.
But then we also have the dummy for Patricia Krenwinkel, as Cliff Booth goes mayhem, like, you know, smashing her head. And
they probably filled that dummy with blood because it's gushing out as he hits it towards the...
And especially when he hits it on a table, you can kind of tell that it's a dummy. But then they mix that with a stunt woman, like when he smashes her in like frames. And also the telephone scene. I can't really tell how they did that, to be honest, when Cliff Booth like slams this woman into a telephone. I'm thinking maybe the telephone covers up something. But I tried to do like a gamma comparison and see if it's like VFX, and I couldn't really tell. Or maybe if like the telephone itself, like the thing that you hold, if that's VFX and falls off. I'm guessing maybe since she's the stunt woman that she's kind of leading the action and Brad Pitt is kind of following her, but I can't really tell. I don't know that much about stunt work in that regard.
Good point.
I'm also thinking about like hair. What exactly is he holding, Brad Pitt, as he's like hitting her head on the pillar? But then also we have the end with obviously the flamethrower, and there's some stunt work there. But yeah, that's a very intense scene. I love the mix with like music and, you know, how they build kind of atmosphere in that scene.
Yeah, it's lit.
Yeah. But yeah, I think that's about it. I think we covered the effects scenes that we wanted to cover for this episode. If there's something that you would like us to talk about more, please let us know, and we'll take a look at it. Well, anyway, so as we say in Sweden, ha det bra.
Ha det bra. Show.